am your host, Richard RJ Eskow. I haven't talked to my next guest in a while, and it's nice to see her again. Laura Packard is a health advocate based in Denver. She's the founder of Healthcare Voices, which is a non-profit grassroots organization for adults with serious medical conditions, which means me, among other people. She's the co-chair of Healthcare Voter, and she runs the pharmaceutical or pharma accountability campaign for the Hero Action Fund. She's also the author of a recent op-ed, by recent I mean October 14th, headline in USA Today: "I'm a cancer survivor, but I might not survive Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court." So with all of that, Laura Packard, first of all, welcome back and thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. So let's talk about your op-ed for a minute here. Basically, I don't want to summarize your thesis for you. I have a bad habit of doing that. I shouldn't do that. So what inspired you to write this op-ed, and just overview, what does it say?
Well, 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and then I went through several months of chemotherapy and a month of radiation to be here today. And I'm self-employed. My insurance is through the Affordable Care Act, and without it, today I would be bankrupt or dead. So Obamacare saved my life.
So, that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, Laura, because the last time you and I talked, you were still going through that. And anybody who knows me knows, I'm a Medicare for all guy. But at the same time, millions of people are depending on, like you are, on what we have. Mm-hmm. So the prospect of going backwards, the prospect of losing protection for pre-existing conditions, losing the ability to have your healthcare subsidized, and mandates, and all the other thing that goes along with the Affordable Care Act would be devastating, would be potentially life-threatening. So for you personally, I would imagine the big concerns are what? Pre-existing conditions and premium costs, probably, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, there are several parts of the Affordable Care Act that benefit me. That everybody with pre-existing conditions is still able to get health insurance. That health insurance is worth something, that it isn't a junk policy that doesn't cover essential health benefits, that there are no more annual or lifetime limits. And all of those things I need. If insurance companies are able to discriminate again and to pick and choose only the healthiest people, eventually that's going to affect us all, especially the 8 million people going through COVID-19 right now that are going to have a pre-existing condition for life.
So, even in today's system, as there's stories of surprise billing, there's stories of, massive expenses of one kind or another, but the toll that it would take if we didn't have something like what we have now would be enormous. So it sounds from your headline, and I did read the op-ed, that while this is always a concern, and that Trump and his party have tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act more than once, that the impetus for writing this now was the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. Now, we pre-record the show, but as of now, the vote has gone ahead. She's been approved by the Judiciary Committee, with the Democrats not showing up because of the invalidity, I would say, of the process. So what's your concern when it comes to what would now be a 6-3 conservative supermajority on the Supreme Court?
Well, in the previous votes, it's been close. And since we lost Ruth Bader Ginsburg, replacing her with someone that has a history of being opposed to the Affordable Care Act means that the entire law itself and all of its protections could be in jeopardy. And the Supreme Court starts oral arguments on the case to destroy the ACA on November 10th, a week after the election.
Which would be conveniently timed for Republicans who might find it uncomfortable to answer their voters for the potential consequences of that vote, I would say. You point out in your op-ed that Amy Coney Barrett has a record on, certainly speaking out on the Affordable Care Act. What is that record?
Well, she hasn't ruled on it per se, but she's written opinions in various places showing her logic is that she opposes it. And President Trump promised to appoint judges that would oppose the Affordable Care Act, so he found somebody to do that. And even today, the 60 Minutes interview came out showing that he wants to destroy the Affordable Care Act. And when Leslie Stahl asked Trump, so how will you protect people with pre-existing conditions? His answer was, because I said so. That's not an answer. 135 million Americans with pre-existing conditions deserve better than that.
I think, I mentioned when I was in the introduction, and again, we're talking with Laura Packard of Healthcare Voices, Healthcare Advocate. I mentioned in the introduction that your organization's mission now covers me because I have chronic conditions. Fortunately, I made it under the wire into Medicare. But if I still had even, employer health care, I'd probably be paying $1,000 a month for the treatments, at least thousands possibly, for the treatments keeping me together, especially if there were no parameters set by something like the Affordable Care Act. And for others like yourself, self-employed, I was also self-employed, but I had coverage through my wife, even worse. I guess my point in all of this is to say, I don't think people, if they haven't gone through it, fully understand how terrifying it is when a political debate could literally decide whether you live or die. And maybe that sounds melodramatic, but I don't think it is. Do you?
No, and I think many of the people that are out here advocating today for the Affordable Care Act are people that would not be here if it had not passed. We've had a broken healthcare system in this country for a long, long time. And what happened before the ACA is that if people didn't have the money, they would die. And we can't go back to that.
So what do you, for example, what is your organization hoping to achieve in drawing attention to this issue? What kind of goals do you have, either in terms of highlighting these issues, perhaps policy goals and so on? What are you hoping for here?
Well, first, I hope that everybody takes the time to look at their elected officials from the president on down, but local officials too, and see what their record is, how they voted on healthcare, and then you vote accordingly. In several states, they have tried again and again to expand Medicaid, to make healthcare available to lower income people, and the Republicans that control their state legislators say no. And so it's important to be an informed voter. And if your representatives are not representing you, vote them out. And then hopefully next year we have the opportunity to pass laws that help people instead of always fighting to keep the crumbs we have now.
And again, Laura Packard from Healthcare Voices. Laura, I'm asking a lot of people these types of questions now, and I'll ask you, assuming we have a Biden administration next year, where do you see, I mean, it's been a struggle getting through these 4 years. Where do you see efforts of those of us who want to expand healthcare for everyone, make sure everyone's taken care of, make sure everyone, people aren't financially ruined, all the issues that go along with healthcare advocacy? Where do you see that going, or have you perhaps not reached that fork in the road yet? But if you have and you're thinking, what do you envision for next year?
Well, I spoke at the Democratic National Convention with Joe Biden, and he promised to me that he would work for a public option. So that is a start, giving insurance companies real competition so that they are forced to deliver more for people like me. But that's only part of it. There were several attempts this year and last year to pass laws on a federal level that would end surprise medical billing. And the private equity firms that fund a lot of the organizations that make the big money from surprise medical bills, they showered Congress with money, and those attempts failed. But the problem is still there. Just because
Right.
we don't have millions of lobbyists to lobby for us does not mean that millions of Americans don't face surprise medical bills. So we need to solve that. We need to lower the cost of prescription drugs, because whatever kind of insurance you have, Americans especially are paying too much for drugs, more than any other country. And we failed to use our negotiating power through Medicare to bargain down some of these prices. But in general, America subsidizes the rest of the world on pharmaceutical drugs, and that's not fair to the patients that live or die because they have to ration their pills.
And for anyone who doesn't know, I think most of our listeners do know, but surprise medical billing is when your insurer tells you have to stay in network, let's say for surgery, and you do everything they ask, and then an assistant surgeon or an assistant radiologist or somebody comes into the room, all of a sudden you find yourself with a 5-figure bill for out-of-network treatment. So this is obviously a huge problem for a lot of people. And I guess before I let you go, obviously I'm thrilled that you're feeling better. I'm thrilled that you're in remission. What words of advice would you have to listeners who want to stay A, informed, and B, active in making sure they're agitating for the health coverage that in the end we all need, not just you or me, but everyone? So what would you say to people who want to learn more and do more in this area?
Mm-hmm. Well, your story matters. And if you feel comfortable telling it, you absolutely should, because that's the only thing that changes people's minds is hearing from other real people, their friends and family, what they're going through. Absolutely share your story if you're willing to do so. Follow me on Twitter, Packard, the Too Hot for Donald Trump Twitter feed if you want more updates on healthcare. And if you are also interested in organizing on behalf of adults with serious medical conditions, look up my organization, Healthcare Voices.
Okay, that sounds great. And where is that? Healthcarevoices.org or something?
Yes, exactly that.
Hey, guessed it on the first try. So listen, Laura Packard, thanks for writing this piece. I think it's very important. Thanks for all the great work you do in this area. Thanks for telling your story. And thanks for coming on the Zero Hour.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back after this. I'm Richard RJ Eskow, and this is the Zero Hour.